Hi everyone, I am Viraj and I will be conducting sessions on design patterns. So just to brief about myself, I've done masters in engineering and information technology and have around 10 years of work experience and it's still ticking. So my main intention of conducting sessions on design patterns is due to the problems that I've faced in my experience while designing the software applications. So most of the time what happens is we design the software, we implement them, and by the time we are ready to deliver the product to the customer, many a times the client changes the requirements, and due to this change in the requirements we have to do lots of changes in the code before delivering it to the customer. So due to this we face many problems as far as the implementation goes. So in order to prevent others from facing the same issues that I faced, I've learned these design patterns and I've planned to explain the design pattern to all the users who are listening here. So just to start with what a design pattern is, design pattern is the generic solutions to the common problems which are encountered in object oriented software design. So we know that everyone faces problems when we are designing the software applications and when we are implementing them, but we have to be cautious that the changes that we do due to change in the requirements that come in have to be minimal. So it should not happen that as the changes come in we keep on changing our code again and again. The very important point is changes have to be minimal. Okay, so because of that we have to use something called a design pattern. So design pattern is generic solutions to common problems which are encountered in object oriented software design. So please remember that patterns are language and domain independent, and it's not only used in softwares, so it's used in all the domains where the designing is involved. So the design patterns that we are going to discuss are generic solutions and it's not only related to software. But since I am from software world, the examples that I'm going to explain in my design patterns are related to software. But please remember, it can be used in all the domains and in different fields of the universe. So these are the different concepts which we are going to discuss now. So these are the main concepts in object oriented programming. So these are the key concepts that we need to know before we move to learning design patterns. Okay, so the first concept that we are learning now is abstraction. So what exactly we mean by abstraction? So abstraction is nothing but focusing upon essential characteristics of the object relative to perspective or the domain of the user. I repeat, abstraction means we are just focusing on essential characteristics of the object and not all the characteristics. So everyone knows what an object is. Object is a named entity in real life world. Like person is an object, car is an object. So these objects have n number of characteristics which are involved with it, right? So like if I consider a person, he is going to have a name, he is going to have a gender. So these are the different characteristics of that person object. So abstraction means we are just focusing on key elements of that object and not all. Okay, so abstraction means just focus on the key elements, that's it. The next concept is encapsulation. Encapsulation means it hides the internal details of an object. I repeat, encapsulation means it hides the internal details of the object. Okay, so abstraction means we are focusing on key elements, and encapsulation means we are hiding the internal details of the object. So abstraction and encapsulation are complementary concepts. Abstraction focuses on the behavior of an object, and encapsulation focuses on the implementation that gives rise to this behavior. I repeat, abstraction focuses on the behavior of an object, and encapsulation focuses on the implementation that gives rise to this behavior. Okay, so I hope the difference between abstraction and encapsulation is clear to us. The next concept that we are going to discuss is modularity. Modularity is the property of dividing the system into a set of cohesive and loosely coupled modules. So when a project comes to us, we should not design that entire project into one module. The most important thing to learn here is we have to divide the project into n number of sub modules, n number of small tasks. The entire project is one task. We have to divide it into n number of small tasks which can be easily handled. Okay, so each of these tasks can be clubbed into one module. So each of these tasks are having their respective sub modules. So modularity is the property of dividing the system. So the huge project I am dividing into small projects. Okay, so that each of them is cohesive and loosely coupled. Loosely coupled means each of the module that I have in my project have to be self-contained. That is, if I divide my project into 10 different modules, each module should be a self-contained module. That is, whatever it needs for its functionality, most of the information have to be within that module, or in object oriented within that class. So whatever attributes, whatever data members that are supposed to be in that module needs to be in that module itself. So if one task have to be performed using that module, it should be able to do it on its own as much as possible. I'm not saying 100%, but maximum tasks have to be performed by that module only. So now, in order for my entire project to function properly, it's not that each of the modules have to work independently and then I need to get my project done. Not like that. I have my project, I divide it into 10 different tasks. So I have 10 different modules. Each module have to work independently, but once I have the results of these modules, they need to interact with each other in order to get my entire job done. Because please remember, my entire project is my final deliverable and not the output of a single module. So when I get a project, I divide it into 10 different modules. Each module is a self-contained module which is doing its respective task, and now these modules are doing their respective task on their own, and then these modules are interacting with each other in order to get my final job done. So these 10 different modules will do their respective task, will communicate with each other in order to get my entire project completed. So the reason I've said that they have to be loosely coupled, because each module have to do their task on their own as much as possible, not 100%. So the communication between different modules have to be minimal. So we need to ensure that. Okay. The next concept is the namespace. Namespace can be used to logically group related classes into one logical structure. I repeat, namespaces can be used to logically group related classes into one logical structure. So you can just imagine that I have a hat, and in that hat there are n number of different classes which I'm logically grouping them into one namespace. Okay. The next concept that we are learning now is hierarchy. Hierarchy means it's the ranking or ordering of abstractions. I repeat, hierarchy is ranking or ordering of abstractions. Example, ISA. Now ISA is a hierarchy. For example, suppose I have a base sorting class and a concrete different sorting algorithms. As everyone knows, there are different algorithms in which you can sort a particular set of sequence. So in object oriented concepts, we have an array. Array is a list of elements. So I can sort the elements in that array, and there are different algorithms for sorting them, right? So if I have say 10 different sorting algorithms, so these sorting algorithms are my concrete classes. Concrete classes because they are actually going to sort the array. Okay, and whatever elements which are common in all these 10 sorting algorithms, I'm going to club them into one base class. So I have a base sorting class, and from that I'm inheriting 10 different concrete classes. So just imagine I have a base class which is a base sorting class, and I'm inheriting 10 different sorting algorithms from this base class. So each of this sorting algorithm is a sorting algorithm, right? That's why in this hierarchy, when I have a base class and I have a 10 different concrete sorting algorithm classes, since each one of the sorting algorithm is a sorting algorithm, right? So that's why all this are going to follow a is-a relationship with the base class. So base class is a generic class, and all these 10 different sorting algorithms are connected to the base class with a is-a relationship. Okay, and second type of hierarchy is part of. Now suppose I have a car. Now car is going to have a door, it's going to have a steering wheel, it's going to have wheels, it's going to have windows, right? So this car is made up of following small elements. So door is a part of a car, window is a part of a car, wheels are part of a car. So these are examples of part of relationship. So just to brief again, what is a hierarchy? Is a hierarchy, the best example is the sorting. I have different sorting algorithms. So all this is a sorting algorithm. So all the concrete sorting algorithms are going to inherit using is-a with the base class. And second example is the car example, where door is a part of a car. So door is a part of relationship with the car. So these are the two different hierarchy examples. One is a and second is part of. So just remember, hierarchy, there are two types, is a and part of. The next concept that we are going to discuss now is aggregation. So when I explained hierarchy, I explained that those are of two types. One is a and second is part of. Now part of hierarchy can be of two types. One is aggregation and second is containment. So the part of hierarchy can be either aggregation or it can be containment. So let's discuss what do we mean by aggregation. Aggregation means inner object's lifetime is not controlled by outer object. I repeat, inner object's lifetime is not controlled by outer object. For example, if classroom is destroyed, then the students which were studying in that classroom will be part of a new classroom now. Right? Suppose we assume that I have a classroom and there are n number of students which are learning in that classroom. Now if someone plans to destroy the classroom, students are going to be shifted into another classroom, right? So if the classroom is destroyed, students are not destroyed. Students will definitely going to be part of another classroom. That's why it's a perfect example of what an aggregation is. Aggregation means the inner object. Who is the inner object now? Student. So the student is a part of relationship with the classroom, right? So aggregation means inner object's lifetime, that is the student's lifetime, is not controlled by outer object's lifetime. It is not controlled by the classroom's lifetime. Understood? So aggregation is the one in which the inner object's lifetime is not controlled by the outer object's lifetime. So in this example, student's lifetime is not controlled by classroom's lifetime, right? So this is represented in the diagrams by a diamond, non-filled diamond. Okay. The next part of is containment. Now what exactly we mean by containment? Any guesses? Containment is opposite of aggregation. Containment means the inner object's lifetime is controlled by outer object. I repeat, inner object's lifetime is controlled by outer object. Example, if a window is closed, its button also gets closed. You can just assume or imagine of a windows. Okay, you get a window with different buttons on them. So if you close the entire window, the button that was displayed on that window also gets closed automatically, right? So I have a window and on that I have a button. So if I close a window, the button automatically gets destroyed. So that's the example of a containment. Containment means inner object's lifetime, that is the button's lifetime, is controlled by outer object. That means it is controlled by the window. Okay. So just to brush up, hierarchy were of two types, as a and part of. Now I gave an example of sorting algorithms for as a, and for a part of I gave an example of a car and its elements, right? So part of again is divided into two different types. One is aggregation. The perfect example of aggregation is if a classroom is destroyed, students are not destroyed. That means inner object's lifetime is not controlled by the outer object. An example of containment is if I close the window, then the buttons which are embedded on that window automatically gets closed, right? So with this we have n number of different concepts which are covered. The next concept that we are going to learn now is polymorphism. So polymorphism means all movable objects can move. This is a perfect example for polymorphism. So please remember, my main intention of these sessions are not covering theories but mapping them with the real life examples. I didn't want my slides to be damn text busy. I wanted my contents to be more of explanation, and I didn't want to load it with the text. That's why if you just notice here, all of my slides are made up of different diagrams, funny diagrams which make you interesting, right? And I hope everyone is enjoying here, right? So let's get back to from what we were discussing. We were discussing the polymorphism. So polymorphism, I'll connect it to an example wherein all movable objects can move, but each object will move in a different way for a same message. So suppose I give a move instruction for a human being. He will move, or he or she will move in a particular direction. But if I give a bird a same move message, then that bird is going to fly, but it's still moving. We can't deny that fact. But do the bird and a human move the same way? No, right? Humans move in a particular way, birds move in a particular way, different animals move in a different ways. But the message that has come to each of these objects or entities is same. And what's the message? Move. Move is the message. So this message is same, but the way each object is moving is different. So polymorphism is exactly the same thing. I get one message, but the way each entity is performing is different. It's polymorphism. That is many morphism. For same message, different entities are behaving a different way, but the message is same. Okay, that's what a polymorphism is. Now polymorphism can be compile time polymorphism or runtime polymorphism. Compile time polymorphism means types will be resolved at compile time. I repeat, types will be resolved at compile time. Examples of compile time polymorphism is if you are overloading functions, if you are overloading operators, and also function templates. So all this belong to the category of compile time polymorphism. Function overloading, operator overloading, and function templates. Runtime polymorphism means types are resolved at runtime. So at runtime, when you are running your program, at that point we decide which function to call. At compile time, when you are compiling a program and generating an object code, at that point itself it's clear which function to call. But in the runtime, it's going to be cleared at runtime when you are running your program which function to call. So compile time is the polymorphism is resolved. That is polymorphism meaning I have one message but there are different functions which are going to do their task independently. But at a time I'm just going to call one function out of them. So let's consider an example, same sorting example we can consider. I have 10 different sorting algorithms. Okay, so if this sorting algorithms I implement using function templates, while compile time only we know which one of them to call. But if the same 10 sorting algorithms I implement using virtual functions in C++, then I can control which function to call at runtime when I am running my program. So that's the difference. If I implement these sorting algorithms using function templates, at compile time itself I am sure which function to call. But if I implement these 10 sorting algorithms using virtual functions in C++, then at runtime I know which function to call. So that's a difference between compile time and runtime polymorphism. So these are the key concepts that were required before getting into design patterns. So now that we know the key concepts in object-oriented programming, now we'll move on to important principles that we need to follow while designing. These are very, very important principles we have to follow. So the first principle is single responsibility principle. Single responsibility principle means there should never be more than one reason for a class to change. I repeat, there should never be more than one reason for a class to change. Okay, so we need to design the classes in such a way that we should not combine different responsibilities into one class. Okay, name itself indicates it's a single responsibility. What will happen if we combine many responsibilities into one class? If we combine many responsibilities into one class, the problem here is there are many chances that these different things might change many times and I have to change my class again and again. But if I divide my project into classes in such a way that each class just handles one responsibility, then the chance of that class being changed is very less versus having 10 responsibilities combined in one class. So remember, while designing class, just have one responsibility associated with it, just one per class. Okay. The next principle is open closed principle. Open closed principle means module should be open for extension, but it should be closed for modification. I repeat, module should be open for extension but closed for modification. Okay, so we should always be able to extend it as and when the client changes their requirements, okay, by adding more functionalities to it, but it should be closed for modification. So try to code or try to design in such a way that we modify the already written code as minimal as possible. Modification have to be very minimal, but extension have to be there. Like for example, I have 10 sorting algorithms now. If someone comes with algorithm number 11, it should be very easy in my design. Your design have to be such that adding 11th sorting algorithm have to be easy. At the same time, I have to ensure that my design have to be such a way that when some change requests come, my modifications have to be minimal. Addition have to be easy by providing new features, but modification have to be minimal. Okay. The next principle is Liskov substitution principle. What this means is functions that use pointers or references of the base class, functions that use pointers or references of the base class must be able to use objects of derived class without even knowing them. Okay, that means if I have a reference to the base class, it must be able to use the objects of derived class even without knowing them. Strange, na? So try to always program to interfaces. Always code in a generic way and don't depend on concrete classes. So move towards interfaces. And if I have a reference to the base, it should be able to use that on derived without even knowing that. It's very important principle. The next principle is dependency inversion principle. Dependency inversion principle means high level modules should not depend on low level modules. High level modules should not depend on low level modules. Both should depend upon abstractions. Very important. So please code in such a way that don't depend your code on different classes, but depend on abstractions, depend on interfaces. Now what exactly we mean by interface? Interface is a class we just have declarations to your functions. Those don't have implementations. And then you can implement those interfaces the way you want. So when you are the client of those classes, just program to the interfaces. Program to the interfaces, we just have declarations to functions, and don't directly program to the concrete classes. Just program to interfaces. And that's dependency inversion principle. So please remember that abstractions should not depend on the details, but details should depend on abstractions. So please Try to code so that you are always dependent on abstractions and not to the concrete classes. Program to interface and not to implementation. Please remember the key point. No variable in your class or your program should hold a reference to concrete class. Always hold a reference to the abstraction. And also remember, no classes should derive from a concrete class. Always derive from interfaces and never derive from concrete classes. The next important principle is interface segregation principle. Interface segregation principle means many client specific interfaces are better than one general purpose interface. I repeat, many client specific interfaces are better than one general purpose interface. Clients should not be forced to depend on methods that they don't use. They should always use specific interfaces, and please don't design only one interface, but try to understand the project requirements. Try to understand who all are the clients of those modules and design the interfaces specific to the clients. There is no hard and fast rule that you have to just design one interface. You have to design each interface depending on respective clients, so that whoever is the user of those functionalities can just call or have the communication to respective client interfaces. Sounds good? So now that we have different important principles covered up here, now everyone might know what an inheritance is in object-oriented concepts, right? So inheritance means we are doing a white box reuse of the code. Why white box? Because implementation of the parent class can be easily overridden by the derived classes. Suppose I have some function implemented in the base class, I can definitely implement it again in the derived class. So that means I have connectivity to intricacies of the function. I can change the function definitions when I inherit. That's why it is white box reuse. I have control over the definitions of functions from the class from which I am inheriting from. The next reusability is composition. Object composition is another form of reuse. And please remember, it's a black box reuse. Why black box? Because when I am having object of one class embedded in my class, suppose there is one class which I am using in my class, then I don't have the controls over internal details of that object. I can directly call the public functions in that particular class. I don't know, or I can't override the function definitions. I have to just use them blindly. That's why it is black box. Please remember, when I am using some other class in my function, I am composing it using containment or aggregation. I can just invoke the functions which are defined in that class. I can't override the function definitions from that class. That's why it is a black box reuse. So now we shall discuss what are the different creational patterns. Just a one-liners I'll be giving right now, and in my future slides we are going to discuss the details of each of the design patterns. So in the creational patterns category, as I've mentioned before, all the design patterns in this category are just focusing on object creation. So let's discuss one-liners of each of the creational design patterns. The first creational pattern is a factory method. Okay, so the factory method is mainly concerned with creating an instance of several of the derived classes. I repeat, it's mainly concerned with creating an instance of several of the derived classes. So suppose I have a base class which is a generic class, and then I have a concrete classes which are inheriting from these derived classes. Then I can have a factory method to which I just pass a parameter mentioning which of the derived class object I want, and the factory method will decide on its own which derived concrete object needs to be created. So that's what factory method is all about. The second is an abstract factory. Abstract factory is mainly concerned with creating an instance of several of the families of classes. So it's creating a family of objects, wherein factory method just creates an object of one class. Okay, factory method creates an object of one class, whereas abstract factory creates entire family of a class. The next creational pattern is a builder pattern. So builder pattern builds the objects in parts. So suppose I have an object creation which can be divided into 10 different steps for the object creation. Then each step can be created by one builder pattern. So builder pattern will create the entire object in different parts. The next creational pattern is a prototype. So prototype pattern is normally used when a fully initialized instance is to be copied or cloned. For example, suppose I create a database object at the start, then for every user that tries to connect to my system, I need not have to create the database object again and again. Instead, I can just clone the already existing object and I can update the variables pertaining to this user. I can change the credentials of this user only. So the step here is going to be clone an existing object and then update the user related attributes inside that object. That means the fully initialized instance I'm copying or cloning. That's what a prototype is. And finally, I have a singleton creational pattern. So singleton means only one instance of object can be created. So there are different use case scenarios where I want only one object of a particular class to be created and I don't want another instance to be created at any cost. So that's what a singleton pattern is. So just to brief again, now creational pattern are all the patterns which are just involved in creating objects. So the first creational pattern is a factory method. So factory method creates an instance of a single class. Second is abstract factory, which creates an instance of several of the families of classes. Third is prototype, wherein the fully initialized objects needs to be copied or cloned, and I'm just updating the some state related attributes. The next is singleton, wherein only single instance can be created. And the last creational pattern is a builder, which builds the objects in parts. The next category of design patterns is structural. So these are the different structural design patterns which are available in the market. So the first is adapter. So adapter design pattern mainly matches the interfaces of different classes. Suppose you have different classes and each of them are having different interfaces and you want both these classes to communicate with each other, then their interfaces have to be matched, right? So you need to have an adapter in between which will adapt the interface of the source class to match it with the interface of the target class. So adapter is mainly used for matching the interfaces of different classes. The next design pattern is a bridge. So bridge separates object interface from its implementation. Okay, so over here normally when we design any product and when the product is already sold to the market, when we find any issues we contact to the support team, because the support team is mainly interacting with the customers. So the support team is separating the development team from the customers. Okay, so the development team have actually built the product, okay, and support team is supporting the product. So once a development or engineering team develops a product and it is delivered to the end users, and if users face any issues, they contact support guys, right? So the support guys are separating the development environment or the developer guys from the customers. So that's a perfect example of what a bridge is. You're separating the interface from its implementation. The next structural design pattern is a composite design pattern. So composite design pattern is mainly involved in tree of simple and composite objects. So if you are building a tree of simple and composite objects, what are composite objects? Composite objects are complex objects which are made up of n number of other simple objects. So if you are planning to form a tree structure of a simple and a complex or a composite objects, then that belong to a composite design pattern. The next design pattern in structural category is decorator. So decorator pattern is mainly used to add the responsibilities to the object dynamically at runtime. So suppose you want to keep on adding responsibilities to the class or responsibilities to the object at runtime, then the decorator is the one to be used. The next structural design pattern is a proxy. So proxy design pattern is mainly used when you want one object to represent another object. So normally when we go to the bank, we don't directly access the accounts. We directly don't talk to accounts, but we talk to accounts using ATM card or a credit card. So credit card is acting as a proxy to my account. My ATM card is acting as a proxy to my account. So proxy is something that is representing another entity. So these are used in different scenarios which I will be covering when I will be discussing the proxy design pattern in detail. Please remember, this is just one liner's explanation of all these design patterns that we have in each respective categories. So the detailing will happen later. So if you are not understanding at this point, no issues at all. I can give a full guarantee that everyone is going to be expert in design pattern if they listen to all my videos. I guarantee it. Okay, now that we have seen what a proxy pattern is, now the next structural pattern is a flyweight. Flyweight pattern is normally used when a fine-grained instance objects need to be used efficiently. That is, a very small objects are there in my system and I need to share those objects efficiently in my across project. So how efficiently can I use them? That's all about flyweight. And the next is facade. So the facade design pattern means a single class is representing the entire subsystem. I repeat, a single class is representing an entire subsystem. So instead of whenever you are designing a project, suppose you have many classes, so the interaction between classes, everything becomes bit complex. So suppose you want to interact with them and you find the architecture too difficult to cope up with. Facade design pattern is simplifying those complexities. So suppose there is a mess created out of many small classes which are here and there. So facade is going to design a class which is going to abstract the entire complex structure. So we can interact with the facade. Facade will take care of how to get my job done by involving different existing classes. So just to reduce the complexity of the entire structure, we use the facade. So these are the different structural patterns. So just to brief, we have adapter pattern, which is mainly matching the interfaces between different classes. Then I have a bridge pattern, which separates the object interface from its implementation. Then we have a composite pattern, wherein if you create a tree of simple and complex objects, it's related to the composite design pattern. Next I have a decorator, wherein if we want to add the responsibilities to the objects dynamically, then decorator is the one to be used. The next is proxy design pattern, in which suppose you want one object to represent another object, then the proxy is the one to be used. The next is the flyweight, wherein a very fine grained small object instances needs to be used efficiently for sharing across your subsystem. The next is facade. Facade is wherein a single class is representing the entire subsystem. So these are the different structural patterns. And lastly, we have behavioral patterns. So in behavioral, these are the different behavioral patterns which are there in the world. So let's discuss one-liners of what each pattern do. So first I have a chain of responsibility. So when you're passing a request between a chain of objects, we mean it's a chain of responsibility. That means you're not delegating one specific object to handle your request, but you are passing the request to a chain of objects. So it's the headache of the chain of objects to handle your request and not only by a single object. So here when you're passing the request, you do not know which object in this chain is going to solve your task, which object is going to solve your purpose. You're just assigning the request to a chain of objects, and it's the task of the chain of objects to resolve your problem. You don't know which one is going to resolve it. The next is command. So in command design pattern, we encapsulate the command request as an object. So we don't have the different commands here, but each of the command is encapsulated in an object. So we are abstracting it. The next design pattern is a interpreter. So in case of interpreter, it includes the language elements in a program. So normally when you are designing a compiler, so compiler needs to implement the different rules for the language understanding, right? So when you write a program, you compile it. Why do you compile it? Because the compiler translates all your requirements from the source language into a target language, which the computer system can understand. So in order for a compiler to convert your source program into a target language, it needs to know your language in which you have written the program in. For example, suppose you are writing a C program or a C++ program or a Java program. Then your compiler needs to know the respective C, C++ and Java languages in order to convert it, right? So the compiler is going to have inbuilt rules of converting your source program into a target program. So interpreter is all about that, wherein you have included different language elements in a program, how to interpret it in short. The next is iterator design pattern. So iterator is normally used when you want to take out traversal of a collection functionality outside the collection. So suppose you have a collection like array, or for example a list. So this list you need to traverse, right? It's not about only populating the list with the elements, but you need to traverse that list in order to print it, in order to sort it, to do n number of tasks. So if you are planning to move the collection functionality, that is the data structures, suppose you are planning to move it outside the iteration functionality, then iterator is the one to be used. That is moving out the iterator functionality from the collection is the iterator. The next design pattern is mediator. So mediator we use when we want to simplify the communication between classes. So suppose there is a mass of small classes created and each class communicates with all other classes in your subsystem. So what happens here is each class communicates with many other different classes. So there is a mass created out here as far as their communication grows. So you want to simplify this communication. And that is a time when you have to have a mediator. So mediator is a guy who is going to help in reducing the complexities which are incorporated by creating this communication. Because currently there are many different classes communicating in different ways, so there is a mass created out here of different communications, and if you want to reduce this complexity of communication per se, use mediate. The next behavioral pattern is memento. We use memento when we want to capture and restore the object's internal state. In short, if you want to do undo operation in your project, use memento. If you want to use undo operation in your project, use memento. The next design pattern is visitor. Visitor defines a new operation to a class without any change. So suppose there are existing classes and you want to define a new operation to it without changing a class, then visitor is the answer for you. The next is template method. So template method is used when you want to defer the exact steps of the algorithm to a subclass. If you want to defer the exact steps of the algorithm to the subclass. So let's see the details of this pattern when I'm discussing template method in detail. The next is strategy. We use a strategy design pattern when you want to encapsulate an algorithm inside a class. So one example that I was considering while explaining hierarchy of 10 sorting algorithms, strategy fits best there. One sorting algorithm will be your one strategy, and then you have to select different options. Okay, so let's get into detail while covering strategy pattern. Next is the state design pattern. Suppose you want to alter an object's behavior only when its state changes. If you want to change the object's behavior only when its state changes, state is the answer for you. And the last design pattern is observer. So observer design pattern we use when you want to notify a change to a number of different objects. So this is mainly related to publish subscribe relationship. Normally we subscribe for newspapers, right? So we are the subscribers, and newspaper published news to us. So newspaper is a publisher and we are the subscribers. So when any event happens in the real life world, newspaper publishes them to all the subscribers who are interested in knowing them. So that's a publish subscribe relationship, and that's the observer pattern. Okay, so with this I have covered all the design patterns in one-liners for all the three different categories. So I have a creational category which is mainly focusing on creating objects. Then I have a structural category which mainly focuses on how we combine the different objects in order to get the entire structure done. And the last is a behavioral pattern which is mainly focusing on the behavior, that means interaction between different classes in order to achieve the goal. Okay, so that's all I had in my introduction session, and then we'll be having the details of each of the 23 patterns in upcoming sessions. Thanks a lot. So for all the videos on design patterns, that's total 23 videos on each of the patterns, please visit the following blog which is mentioned on your screen. It's virajonlinetutor.blogspot.in. It has very interesting 23 different design pattern videos with lots of innovative diagrams, lots of teaching, and I'm surely everyone is going to love these videos. So if you all go through all the 23 different videos, I guarantee that everyone is going to be expert in design patterns for sure. There is a lots of diagram, lots of way of innovative teaching in it. So let's see y'all everyone on this blog, virajonlinetutor.blogspot.in. Catch you